Hello everybody, welcome back to the CCNA routing switching video series brought to you by ABY Design and Tech. In this video, we will have a look at the function of a firewall and the role it performs in today's computer networks. So, the first question you guys are probably asking yourselves, what is the main purpose or what is the main function of a firewall? Now, the firewall sits at the edge of our computer networks and it acts as a shield between our network and the outside world. Essentially, it stops people from getting into your network. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. I saw the whole point of building a computer network is to allow communication across the world. Why do we want to stop people from accessing our network? Essentially, we don't want to stop everybody from accessing our network. We want to only stop people with bad intentions who want to do bad things. As an example, install viruses and malware on the computers in your network. So, to drive this point home, let's compare a firewall to the role a door would play with a house. Okay, so we all know that houses have doors. So the reason why houses have doors is to allow access into the house, to allow people to enter your house. However, even though that's the main role of a door, we just don't leave our doors unlocked. Essentially, if we're leaving our doors unlocked, we're saying to the outside world, my house is free to enter, nothing's going to stop you. We lock our door so we can have control of who can enter and leave our house. So when somebody wants to enter our house, we look outside, see who it is. If it's a good guy, so let's say it's a family member, it's a delivery you're expecting, etc., then you're obviously going to unlock your door and allow access. However, more worryingly, let's say, as an example, you saw a bunch of people standing outside your house, they've got weapons, they've got baseball bats, etc. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that these people have probably got bad intentions. It's best to not let them enter your house. And so that's exactly the role that a firewall plays. A firewall will sit at the edge of our network and it will inspect all traffic entering and leaving that network. And the role of the firewall is to make a choice, okay? Is this traffic good or is this traffic bad? Is this traffic a legitimate traffic? Let's say it's a HTTP request. Is it an email? Okay, that's allowed to pass through. However, is this traffic bad? Okay, so let's say this traffic may be an email, but does this traffic have a virus or malware attached to it? If that's the case, then this traffic's bad and I'm going to drop it. Now, the term traffic, if this is the first time you guys are hearing it, it's just a broad term which is used to describe all the data passing over our network. Essentially, it's like how we describe vehicles on the road. When we're driving down a road and there's a lot of cars, a lot of motorbikes on the road, a lot of vehicles on the road, well then we just describe that as traffic. Essentially, all traffic is just a term that's used to describe all the data passing over our network from every device. And again, as we start to see more and more terms, I will explain what these terms mean just in case you've never heard of these terms. So now, let's see the firewall in action. So in this case, Brad is a user on the internet. Okay, he wants to send some legitimate traffic to Bob. In this case, it's going to be an email. Now, because he's on the internet, a lot of the time, the devices you're going to be communicating with are going to be on the internet. As a prime example, websites you visit, etc. So we don't know if these websites we're visiting are going to be trustworthy. Obviously, there's other ways to find out, etc., which we'll discuss later on in this video. But essentially, what the firewall does is that it sets up the perimeter of your network. So think of it as sitting, it's like the entry point into your network. It sits there. And its job is to analyze all traffic passing through it. So in this case, Brad has got some data that he wants to send to Bob. And this, like I said before, is going to be an email. So he sends this data, travels over the internet, and finally arrives at the edge of our network. So in this case, the firewall is going to intercept it. He's going to say, okay, before you could pass through me, I'm going to analyze what this traffic, what this data is. In this case, I've left the text box as orange to signify that at this point in time, even though the data is good, it's legitimate traffic, the firewall doesn't know whether he can trust his data or whether he can't, whether it's good or bad. So he needs to inspect it a bit further. So in this case, the firewall performs a thorough inspection of the data. It can say, okay, this data is all good. It's an email. I've looked at the email and it doesn't have anything nasty attached to it. I can't see anything bad about this data. So now I'm going to send this data all the way over to Bob. And so this data arrives at Bob's laptop. Bob can open up the email and read it. Now, let's see what a firewall would do when it receives bad data. or bad traffic. In this case, we have some bad guy on the internet. Okay, let's say he's a hacker. He's up to no good, basically, and he's going to pretend to be Brad. So he's going to pretend to be Brad. He's going to be like, okay, I know that Bob trusts Brad. I've done my research, etc. So I'm going to pretend to be Brad. I'm going to send Bob an email, but this email is going to have a virus attached to it, so that when Bob opens up this email, it's going to affect his computer with ransomware, and I'll be able to make loads of money out of Bob. So in this case, this bad guy, he's somewhere out on the internet. He sends this data, this email. This email is going to go through all the internet, etc., and finally arrive at our network, the edge of our network. Now, again, the firewall is going to intercept this because it sits at the edge. Essentially, all traffic passes through it. So it's going to analyze all traffic entering and leaving. And at this point in time, even though the data is bad, again, the firewall doesn't know that this data is bad. So it's like, okay, I'm the firewall. I can control what can enter and exit this network, and I'm going to inspect this data that I've received. After inspecting this data, he's like, okay, so I've inspected this data. This data is bad. It contains a virus. This email contains a virus, and now I'm just going to drop it. And so literally all it does is the firewall, which is just going to drop this traffic. This traffic will travel no further, no deeper into our network. So in this case, the firewall has done its job. It's stopped the bad data from getting through, and it's stopped from a virus being installed on Bob's laptop. So you're probably thinking, okay, I can understand why the firewall is going to stop traffic from entering our network, but why was it stop traffic from leaving our network? Well, the point in case is that usually the way that the bad traffic gets onto the network in the first place is that a user from the inside initiates a connection with some sort of device, some sort of server on the outside. As an example, your user may unknowingly visit a website which is known for having malware. He may click on that website, and because there's already a connection initiated, that traffic would be allowed back through the firewall, and that virus, that malware, could be installed on that user's computer. So firewalls, they act both ways. They stop traffic from entering your network, but most importantly, they control what traffic can leave your network. They essentially can control what your users can do out on the internet, which is very, very important, because what we don't want to do is stop everything from getting in, but then users are still able to access malicious websites or websites that they shouldn't be trying to access. And also, it depends where the firewall is deployed as well. As an example, you could have an internal firewall deployed in front of your corporate servers, and that firewall can essentially control who can access what server, etc. So what does a firewall inspect? Now, we understand the basic function of a firewall, essentially just a shield that protects your network from the bad things unless the good things go through. So traffic being sent across the network will have information added to that data. So like I said before, think of the data as a letter. You write, let's say a letter, you put it into an envelope, and then you put data or information on the envelope so that letter can get from point A to point B. Essentially, that's what we do when a computer sends data. It takes that data, it puts information on that data so it can get from point A to point B. So we'll discuss later in this video, sorry, not in this video, but we'll just discuss later in this series about what information we add to the data and so on. But it's this information added to the data, this is the information as well as the data itself, that the firewall looks at when it's deciding whether this traffic is allowed or should be stopped. And the information that's added to each packet is what a firewall inspects, like I said before, and this is important. So as network admins, we have to configure these firewalls. So essentially, these devices, switches, routers, firewalls, etc., wireless access points, wireless LAN controllers, they operate automatically. So essentially, what I mean by automatically, they operate in the background, allowing us to do allowing us to communicate over networks. However, before they can do that, we have to configure these devices and tell them what it is they need to do. So when we configure a firewall, we're essentially going to create a bunch of rules on the firewall, telling the firewall, okay, this is what's allowed, this is what's blocked, this is what websites a user can visit, this is what websites a user can't, this is what traffic's allowed to come through from the internet into the outside, and this is what people from the internet can communicate with on the inside of our network, etc. So we configure rules on the firewall, and which will dictate what traffic is allowed through, etc., and what traffic is not allowed through. So firewall looks at all sorts of things. As an example, layer 3 addressing information, so IP addresses. So as an example, there's a server on the internet with a certain IP address, and that server is known for having malware and viruses. So if a user, let's say, accesses that server or communicates with that server, chances are that server is going to download malware onto their user's computer. So we can block by IP address. Now we can also block by layer 4 port numbers. Now we'll get into layer 4 port numbers in later video, but think of port numbers as being like this. So when we discussed IP, we discussed how the postcode would essentially tell the delivery driver, okay, to what street this person lives on. The house number is going to act like the IP address in terms of it's going to uniquely identify you within that street. The port number acts like the person in the house. So after the delivery driver has found out, okay, this person lives in this street, this is a house I'm supposed to post this letter to, chances are that letter is only going to one person in the house. So that letter is obviously going to have someone's name on it, and so the delivery driver's duty is to deliver the letter to only that person in the house, the person that letter is meant for. Essentially, that's what port numbers allow you to do. Port numbers will essentially tell the receiving computer to what computer program this data should be sent to. Again, we'll dive into this in a later video and essentially explore how it does this, but that's the basis of what port numbers are used for. We can use URL filtering. So again, we can block and allow certain websites. We can allow them, let's say, access to work websites, and maybe block Facebook and other websites that they shouldn't be accessing. Firewalls can also do something called application visibility control. So they can look at the application data and allow, block, or limit certain applications. Now, firewalls can do much more than this, but in order to understand that, you need to understand more about the fundamentals of networking and get a better grasp of networking. Essentially, what I don't want to do is overload you guys with information. This video is just going to describe the basic function of a firewall, allowing stuff in and blocking stuff that shouldn't be allowed in, or allowing stuff out and blocking stuff which shouldn't be allowed out. We've looked at some of the ways that a firewall can control this. Now, a firewall can do a lot more. However, we'll look at that in a later video. Essentially, once we've grasped more of the network fundamentals, understand how traffic is moving from point A to point B, once we've looked at more technologies, then we can then dive into firewalls and see what they do. So to be fair, that's the end of this video. As you can see, it's a very short video. Firewalls, what they do is very, very simple. They just allow and block access to our network, and the reason being, we want to have control of who can access our network, and we want to stop people with bad intentions from being able to get access to our network and do bad things. Again, if you like this video, please subscribe to my channel. Thank you for watching, and please spread the message, because like I always say, we want to have as many people having access to free quality IT content as possible. Thank you very much.